here we go. So, a lot of people couldn't make it today. Well, that's okay. I'm gonna put this up on YouTube, but just having a few people in here is actually an unprecedented opportunity because I get to work more one-on-one with you. And so, before we start, what I want to get into, um, I want to know if anybody has any personal jazz questions or things that you really want to know about. Or I heard this, I don't understand this, tell me about it. So, what's going on?
Yeah, just mainly trying to get better at improv. I mean, I've heard multiple times
Right.
just do improv, listen, that'll make you better, but sometimes I don't feel like that's helping.
Okay, so let me address that topic specifically. So, the reason why people tell you for jazz music to listen all the time and listen to as many recordings of a song as you can. So the point is when you're listening is to sort of absorb what they're doing. And it's one thing to absorb that, but then it's another thing to actually go out and apply it, which that takes practice to apply it. For some people, it's a little bit more natural of a thing. You know, when I joined jazz band in high school, I didn't know how to improv at all, of course, and I started listening to jazz that whole year. The very end of that year, I was already improvising. I had a solo in the very last concert, and I improv, and I actually did pretty decently. That's because I had been listening to and absorbing what people had been doing. So I do things like phrasing. I knew certain licks. Licks are everything for improvisation. I knew about feeling and mood and that type of thing, and very sensitive to vibratos and things like that. And so, there's a couple different ways to go about it. There is like what I call hard listening, which is where like you take a song like Common Ground by Brecker Brothers, which is one of my favorite tunes, and you know, you like listen to that recording because you hear something and they're like, oh, how'd they play that? And that's like active listening. That's hard listening. You're listening intentionally, specifically, and going and trying to replicate that. And then there's soft listening or passive listening. Passive listening really works great for me, in my opinion, because you know I have ADD, and so I'm really prone to multitasking all the time. It's really hard for me to do just one thing at a time. And so what I'll do is like when I'm playing video games or something, always when I'm playing video games, or I'm cooking or something like that, something that doesn't require like an extreme amount of focus, I'll listen to music and listen to jazz music, and I'll vicariously sort of pick that up, like secondhand smoke. You know what I mean? I'll sort of just pick it up. Like, oh, I heard this somewhere, and then it kind of just pops out, you know. But a big thing about it is listening and trying to find the players that you like and the things, the type of jazz that you like and that type of thing. Finding the what do I like about them specifically? Are they playing like these kind of licks? Oh, I want to play those kind of licks, and so I listen to those, and then I try and replicate that on my horn or whatever. You know what I mean? You can do it by horn. You can do it by voice. Your voice is a very powerful tool. Because if you can sing it, it's easier for you to translate it onto your instrument. You know what I mean? And so, whether that be piano or even baritone or anything like that, you can translate it over. And so, that was fun.
Kind of going back to finding what you like on the people who you listen to. My entire Spotify is just a bunch of baritone saxophonists.
Right.
And personally, my favorite is Ronnie Huber. He has a super bright sound. He does stupid high range stuff, really fast licks. And sometimes when you hear me, that's what I'm trying to imitate. But if I'm trying to do something slow, maybe melodical, I'll listen to Jerry Mulligan. If I just want straight impressive licks, it's Pepper Adams.
Right.
If I want bebop, it would be like Cecil Payne, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just kind of back out.
So that is a good thing too. Is having sort of a palette of players to pull certain things from. For me, it's mostly tenor players on my playlist, and you If I want something really hard, popping and attacking, that type of thing, I'll listen to Sonny Rollins. If I want just something that's like really nasty, because sometimes you get asked to do something that's like really dirty, super bluesy, super nasty, I'll think about, what Leo P does. I don't really like Leo P as a person, and sometimes I don't like his playing, but some of his stuff is really appealing. He's a baritone player, but I'll incorporate that into my playing and stuff like that, with the multiphonics and all that. Smooth playing, I listen to Michael Brecker and Ed Kaye. Those are my go-to guys, especially Ed Kaye, Dr. Ed Kaye. And I have a list of people for all of the things. Ed Kaye is really great for me because he does everything. He does the bebop, he does smooth stuff, he does a lot of Latin stuff. He plays with a Latin pop group called Pablo, and goes to their stuff all the time. So I'm kind of always listening. He plays with the Miami Saxophone Quartet, which covers a wide breadth of saxophone music. Yeah, mostly jazz. I mean, 99% jazz.
Like the only problem with baritone saxophonists is I haven't really found one that's more Latin. Ronnie Huber, he does pretty much everything. It's just I haven't found a specific player for Latin bari sax I don't like.
So that's sort of the problem. Is in my experience too, I don't notice a lot of like Latin bari players. Bari doesn't get featured super often in Latin music as much as other woodwinds do. Like the flute gets featured all the time in Latin music.
There is one song I know of. It's Journey to Recife. It's like a Brazil city, and it has a bari solo in it, and it's really cool, and it's very bossa nova-ish.
Right. Another one that you probably know is Sunrise Lady. But Sunrise Lady is a samba, and it doesn't have like other ethnic characteristics that you might be looking for in other kinds of music.
So I mean, what I'll do is sometimes I'll just listen to Stan Getz because he has
Yeah.
a lot of good.
That's the other thing too, is you can borrow things. It's kind of like, there's sort of a misconception that's like, oh, I'm a trombone player, so I only listen to trombones. Oh, I'm a saxophone player, so I only listen to saxophones. I listen to everybody from all different instruments. I'll be honest, I don't listen to a lot of trumpet players. They don't always play stuff that I like. That's just how I am. Sometimes I really do. Like, I really love the stuff that Wynton Marsalis plays and all that type of thing. But another great thing for everybody to listen to, no matter what instrument you play, is vocalists. Vocalists, I mean, it translates, it's sort of like a common language for everybody. And it's something that we can all grasp. Like, you can't really, but for a saxophonist, it's not like a lingua franca sort of to do the slide thing. Very close to the door, so it doesn't get loud. But to do all sorts of tricks with the slide and that type of thing, it doesn't translate exactly well because we don't have a slide, we have buttons. So we can try and imitate that type of stuff. But almost all instruments are in some way able to replicate the human voice to some standard, especially saxophone. And I would say that every instrument has its own way that it is able to emulate the human voice. Like, for example, with baritone, if you're using baritone or trombone or something like that, with baritone specifically, it's the range imitates human voice really, really well, the timbre and stuff like that. It blends, it's very beautiful. With trombone, you're able to do glisses and certain inflections like the human voice can. For saxophone, it can do a lot of the articulation things that the human voice can do. Some of the range stuff, if not more. And also, the thing that saxophone is sort of designed to do is blend with any instrument. And so, it blends with the human voice really well, which is why like a lot of songs, whether it be through any genre, especially like pop music, rock music, jazz music, there's like saxophone solos all the time. Which, it's for that purpose, And so, the background I was saying earlier, I mean, listening to players, find ones that you like, even if they're not your instrument, replicate that stuff. I watched like hours worth of videos on jazz scatting because of I like some of the licks that they use in there, and I can replicate those on my horn. I might not be able to do like certain slides as easily as like a human voice, but I can put things in place of that that make it authentic to my playing and to my instrument. You know what I mean? And so that's another thing that you might be thinking of is so improvisation. It's an art form. You know, there's a time and a place for it's time for me to experiment and like play my art, my pure expression, whatever. And then there's a time and a place for um, I need to be servicing the song. And so jazz music was originally developed as dance music, right? It was played in nightclubs and stuff like that. And so solos were meant as a sort of a break in there where the instrumentalist can be featured and play stuff that the dancers kind of really hyped up or whatever and but that type of solo really services the song and many situations and styles of jazz your solo number one has to fit the song. It's gotta service it with I mean like calypso music or pretty much all Latin music. It's all about being able to move to it because Latino music was developed for specific kinds of dances and things like that. That's what it's about. Swing is always about swing dancing. Ballads aren't always about dancing, and that's where it sort of turns into now it's my time to sort of, I don't have to play super by the book, and I can really show off my artistry. And in the context of a ballad, it's how soft you can play your dynamic range and that type of thing. Demonstrate on my horn. You know, like the ballad that we're working on in Jazz Band right now, in Jazz One, Autumn. That ballad was specifically chosen for me because of my subtone and my abilities in lyricness and that type of thing. Some things like that are all about, how pretty can you play. And it's not always about, especially in the ballad, you don't have to fill it up with really fast stuff. That's the first thing. Whenever somebody tries to like improv and sound impressive for the first time, they just go right out the gate with like 16th notes and all this type of stuff. And that makes you sound really stupid because all that 16th note stuff that you hear in jazz music, the bebopping, that is pretty highly calculated. And it's like to a layman, it sounds random because they kind of don't understand it. But if you actually play random stuff, they can tell the difference that you don't know what you're doing. Bebop and really fast stuff is really calculated. But you don't always have to play super calculated stuff. Um, One thing that's really important that never really gets taught with improv is, it really is democracy. It's the reflection of your freedom. And you need to speak, but you can't just, say whatever. You really need to speak and speak passionately all the time. You know, there's a difference between, you know, like, you guys ever heard like Dr. Fagan give a speech before, or hear him talk ever. I know you, some of the newer guys haven't, but like, you ever hear like President Obama talk, right? You know, like Obama talked in a very certain way that was very captivating to his audiences, where his speech pattern became like an entire field of study for giving speeches, because he was able to captivate his audience with the way that he spoke. Versus like, I don't want to get political, but like with Trump, for example, Trump doesn't have any formal speech training, but to his credit, the fact that he sounded kind of stupid really attracted people who were like, oh, he talks like a common man like me. He's not uptight, white collar, whatever. That's my man. And we give the illusion of that type of thing. But so, really speaking with the heart whenever you're playing is important, no matter what style it is. And even if it's just one note at a time, you can play a very passionate and engaging solo with just one note. You know, it's not about the notes that you play exactly. Sometimes it is, but it's really about your conviction, and it's about artistry. You know, inside all of us here is an artist. They're different. Everybody in this room is quite different from each other. You know, and everybody watching is quite different from anybody here. You know, we're all different in our own way, but through improvisation, we get to reflect our individuality, but the fact that our differences don't drive us apart, but instead bring us together because we're a band of many different colors and people. You know, they get together to make this kind of music and this kind of art. You know what I mean? So that's something that is really kind of depressing to me because I've been to a lot of improv master classes with certain teachers and things like that. We've tried in the past, and you know, they just try and teach like, oh, this is the blues scale, this is the 12-bar blues form, this is the rhythm change, and all that stuff is important. But they're like, now just go, figure it out. I mean, it kind of is like that in certain situations, but it's also like they're never taught to be an artist. You need to be an artist when you play. You know, make it authentic. You know, there's some times where you want to play, you want to really show off or do whatever, but show off what you got, not what you think you got. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's fun and exciting to take a risk, but if it's like gonna be, I've never done 60 note bebop lines, but I'm playing for the president right now, and I think it's a really good time to experiment. No, it's not. You're gonna embarrass yourself. Stick to what you know. But when it comes to performances, you can take risks when you think when it's time. There's a time for it. But in your own time, how do I make this happen? Where does it come from? Where does artistry, where does passion come from? What is it? So jazz music is born from blues music, which was, a reflection of the pain and suffering of slaves in the American South. And jazz music was dance music, but some of the more art jazz music um, reflected people's melancholy and their pain in life. I mean, especially, in the beginning half of the 20th century, the African American experience sucked. It was awful. And so some of that pain was translated into, blues with some bebop things and stuff like that. But I mean, we all are going through something. We all have our own struggles in life. People being prejudiced against us in some sort of way, um, and use that and translate it into your playing. Even if something isn't directly happening to you, sort of in a sense, take up a cause. You see things that are happening to other people, have the pain, the empathy in your playing. Whether it's from blues to bebop to ballads to Latin, you know, that's where that artistry comes from. And to apply it, I like to find certain licks that players do that are really expressive. Like the one that you hear in smooth jazz all the time that Michael Greger does. This will be something like You know, that sort of glissy thing going back and forth. That it's weird to talk about it in an academic way, you know, to analyze it like it's, you know, 17th century music theory. But it's different because it's not, it doesn't exactly have to do with theory at all, and it's more about embellishment, and that embellishment meaning something to people that makes people feel something, as opposed to that has a certain way, but this is more appealing to people, not in a sort of mass-produced way, but in a sort of authentic sense. That type of thing, people get that. People like that. People understand that. You know. And when you try these things for the first time, like specifically, like little, you know, whether it be glissy things, trills, or whatever, you know, you might not always be great at it the first time. God knows I wasn't. But it takes practice and to get it to sound the way that you like. A big thing too is um, when you're practicing something, you know, and you get, let's say that like you're practicing like a lick that's like over 4 bars or something, right? Um, let's say that like once you actually like can play it, you record yourself playing it the first time, and then you practice it a little bit more. Maybe you add some things there, maybe you take away some things, maybe you substitute something, you know. And then you keep recording yourself along the way, and you listen to how you change. And but the thing is, you listen back and you go, I like that. Oh, I don't like that. I don't like that. So what can I do in place of that? How can I change that? That is active participation in you becoming better, you know? And it's kind of interesting because there's sort of different ways to approach it for each individual style of jazz. Not all methods work the same way. Like the way that you're trying to put together really fast bebop lines is not the way that you would go about with melodic improvisation or even atonal improvisation. You know, atonal improvisation is like it's becoming more prominent in like avant-garde styles of jazz music and all over the place. But um, you know, that's sort of, in my opinion, like the most improvisational improv because it doesn't follow form or anything. It's purely whatever. That's what free jazz is. Free jazz typically is atonal and is without form. It's just improv, just pure improv. But whenever you listen to a person soloing, like let's say you're listening to the Woody Herman band play Things Ain't What They Used to Be, which is a pretty popular chart by them. And whenever you go and you listen to that player, that saxophone player, that clarinet player, whoever is improvising, you know, um, they're doing that type of music in service to that type of song. You know what I mean? They're not thinking about it from a melodic aspect. They probably aren't. If anything, if they are, it's probably from like a hard bop, like scatting type thing. You know what I mean? And so you kind of have to find the ways that there are to approach each individual style. Um, Latin, I mean, within Latin jazz itself, there's literally 100 different kinds of styles, from samba to bossa nova to joropo, soca, merengue, cascasava, rumba. I mean, there's so many, you know, subgenres of that subgenre. You know, there's different ways to approach that, and how do I approach that specifically? Um, I would give this advice to you is when playing ethnic music, I guess you could call it, approach it in the most authentic way possible. Like if you try and play the same thing over a 12 bar blues that you try, if you, things that you play in a 12 bar blues, like at a bar or something, you go and try and play that in the Latin chart, it doesn't make sense. you know. With bossa nova, bossa nova and samba have like a little bit, especially bossa nova, have jazz influence in them and a little bit of blues stuff in there, some character that's not quite the same as American blues. You have to approach it authentically, you know. Go and listen to those players. Find recordings of people doing stuff, you know, that aren't in English, you know. Um, Paulo, the pop band that AKA is in, they don't sing songs in English, ever. Um, but through listening to them, I've kind of got the style of how it's supposed to go. And that's another thing too, especially with ethnic music, when it's not in English, key into how they're saying the words. How they're saying the words. People in different languages speak with different rhythms to their words. For example, in English, we have a lot of Scotch snaps. Scotch snaps is a rhythm that goes like this. Da-da, da-da, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We say Scotch snaps all the time in this language. And so sometimes a lot of, as American English speakers, it reflects in our improvisation. They call it MPBI. I forget what it stands for, it's something fancy. But like in Latin music, or let's say in Spanish, Scotch snaps are not as prevalent as they are in English. They speak a lot of what's called amphibracs. Amphibracs go like this, where it's like stressed syllable, unstressed, stressed. Lo siento, mañana, te quiero, mi gente, that type of thing. And so their music reflects that, how they speak. And in fact, the dembo drum group, which is super popular in Latin music, it's like, you hear that all over Latin music. That itself is an amphibrac.
Would you consider like the caravan group something like that?
Yeah, but it'd be like a really fast amphibrac.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, multimeter, fast, super fast amphibrac. But yeah, but you know what I'm saying? That when approaching ethnic music and different kinds of jazz and that's not, you know, let's say swing, approach it authentically. And for me, it's become really exciting in the past couple of years because more ethnic groups are getting involved in jazz. People from India are coming over and making Indian jazz. People from Romania and Latvia are coming over and making, you know, Eastern European jazz with Eastern European influence, which is super exciting and super cool. Saxophone professor over at A&M Commerce, my old lesson teacher, Dr. Chris Beatty, he spent a couple of years in Latvia teaching saxophone, doing jazz and stuff like that there because it's become really popular. And another guy who I'm really good friends with, who I'm actually planning on going to his university next. Excuse me. He was the lead tenor player in Stan Kenton's band. I don't know why his name escapes me. Stuff like that always happens to me. But he, you know, he spent a couple of years in Romania because there jazz is becoming super popular now, and so it's really fascinating that people's different cultural idioms from across the world are now being adapted into jazz music. I'm seeing Chinese jazz music and Japanese influenced jazz music, and it's really interesting. You know, when we think about jazz music, we think about, well, the first thing that everybody thinks about is like swing, because it's like kind of the most classic. It's the first like recognizable instance. Everybody's like, oh, jazz music, like Glenn Miller and stuff like that. And yeah, that is jazz music, and that is an authentic part of jazz music. But it's sort of like what the layman is exposed to as secondhand smoke, or like, you know, people. I'd say most people don't like jazz. They don't mind jazz music. They like it in the background at dinner, you know.
Go from Ipanema in the elevator.
Yeah, they like it in the elevator, during times. They like jazz music at, in lobbies, stuff like that. People like, I call it secondhand smoke music, because it's like secondhand smoke. You know, you hear it at the airport or whatever. People are actually the same way with classical music too. People don't like classical music. People don't mind classical music. They like to hear it secondhand smoke or certain things. They like to hear it in a nice store or whatever, or when they're eating at a super fancy restaurant. But it's not always about. There's a time and a place for pleasing the layman, playing stuff that's digestible and easy for them to understand. Something like this is easy to understand to everybody. Super easy, not boring, but it's just like, it's very digestible, right? As opposed to, something where it jumps around through a lot of keys and chromaticism. To us, that's really interesting. That's beautiful. That's kind of cool. But to everybody else, like, the hell are you doing? Yeah, I'm trying to eat dinner. I don't want to hear you switch chords. And you'll see that now in pop music. Pop music, everybody calls it the four chords of pop. It's just the same four chords in every song over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And like even in rap music, you see it too. But rap music is kind of different because rap music is more about what people are actually saying rather than what's going on in the background. Unless you're a SoundCloud rapper. And, and like for example, like Industry Baby by Lil Nas. I love Lil Nas. I think he's great. He makes a lot of different kinds of like music. But like Industry Baby is just the same four bars basically repeated over and over and over and over and over again. But because he's saying different things over and over and over again, the stuff in the background doesn't get boring and repetitive. Because people really aren't even listening to the background part in the first place. They're listening to what he is going to say. That's kind of how pop music is too. Pop music is meant to be super, super, super digestible and incredibly pandering. Anybody can turn on 106.1 and just be okay with that. You know what I mean?
Top 40 for a reason.
Yeah. It's there, it's easy. I could put it on in the shoe store and it's not gonna hurt anyone. Nobody's not gonna like it, and if they don't like it, they're just gonna tune it out. It's not gonna like offend them. People get offended or scared by music. It is crazy. It's crazy to witness, and I used to kind of understand it, but then when I went to school for music and started studying it, it's kind of like, what? Like for example, like my dad's side of the family is Mexican. They're really Spanish, and they lived in Mexico for about 100 years. So they're kind of like an ethnic mix between European, Spanish, and then Mexican. But my dad really, really, really hates banda music to the point to where if he hears it, he like gets upset. Like it almost makes him ill. Like he hates banda music, which he just used to say that all the time as a kid. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. Banda music is not good, I guess. I listened to it and I was like, it's not my favorite. It's not that I don't like it, but I was just like, how could you be like really upset or even sickened by this? Like that really tells you something right there. To people like us who hear music and are exposed to music of all different kinds all the time, music doesn't hurt us like that because we're just like, oh, that's interesting. That type of
Yeah,
thing.
it's like how people hate country music so much.
Right. People will get in like a violent, like they really either love country music or they hate country music or they don't like country music, whatever, it's that type of thing. But like, people get really, really upset or even offended by, hey, come on, sit down. People get really upset or even like offended whenever they hear like rap music. My mom hates rap music, you know. She's a old lady anyway, but, you know, and it's weird, right? That people get like offended and like unsettled by that. When to us, it's just like, oh, that's music, you know. Um, some people feel that way about secular music. People who are in churches feel that, like for example, if I want to strike a chord with some people, whenever Lil Nas released Montero, you know, and
Running on the devil.
yeah, where he's like doing the lap dance on the devil, that really upset a lot of churchgoers. Even though at the end, it's like him seducing the devil and kills him. A lot of people didn't even finish the damn video, but they don't care. That's another thing is people just want. People like envy. People like to be mad at a specific thing because it's like empowering. Because it's like, oh, I have a defined thing to be worried about. It's going to offend my faith, you know? Why is it doing to our children? They're listening to this music, and that goes on and on and on. That's another thing in music. It doesn't happen in just music, but in like culture everywhere. It's called juvenoia. Juvenoia.
Think of the children.
Yeah, juvenoia gives, if you don't know the definition, it gives meaning to this phrase. Oh, kids these days. And it was the same thing. People were so scared about rock music, like hard rock, you know, like 20 or 30 years ago. People were really scared, like, oh, that's going to corrupt them and like turn them evil and Satan worshiper. Even to the point where a lot of rock bands who did like the whole like Satan thing, they're not actually Satanists. They were just like basically trying to out Satan each other for the meme of it, to see like who could be more Satan. You
It's
know
like
what I
when
mean?
the Tide Pod challenge was big, and
Right.
nobody was doing it, it just made the adults super weird about it. So it was
Yeah,
funny.
people were getting like vehemently upset over it. When it should, if an issue like that ever happened, it's just like, oh, people want to eat Tide Pods? All right, cool. Don't be like, oh, you can't eat Tide Pods.
That makes it funny.
Who cares? Yeah. But that's what people draw.
Natural selection.
Yeah, it's natural selection,
It's
right?
happening with the devious lick right now. Like, a lot of the TikToks, they don't even take it; they just film it, and like everybody just gets pissed.
I think it's personally, I know this is a little off track, but whatever, it's my class. I think it's hilarious about the devious with things that people are like unscrewing whole water fountains and taking them. That is so funny. And definitely like that's funny to me now.
People are like learning how to do plumbing just so they can
yeah,
do
just so they can
toilets.
do this meme. Like, you know what I mean?
So
Actually, good skill.
I'm sure, you know, but I can see the damage or whatever, and that's kind of not cool. But it's also really, really funny. You know what I mean? But if you had asked me, like, if I was in high school, when I like the type of person that I was when I was in high school, I'd be like, that's not okay. But you know, get into your adulthood, and you're like, oh, it's kind of really funny. But you know, school doesn't see it that way. They're like, we can't just have people stealing the damn water fountains, which I totally understand. Like, you know, maybe part of the devious lake challenge should also be like, not devious lake, like put the water fountain back.
Yeah, I saw a video like that. It's the complete opposite of devious. Like I can't remember what they called it, but they're literally just putting back hand sanitizer. And I'm just like, okay.
our
Right.
school got like all of our. I've been seeing story posts where our school got like all of their restrooms shut down because people were licking like the toilet paper and hand sanitizer and just.
I saw a thing from my old high school, or no, I don't think it was my old high school. I think it was a different high school that my brother had shown me a thing about. There was a high school who took the bathroom doors off of the.
Oh my god. Oh, we don't have bathroom doors to take off. So.
Anyway,
Welcome to rest.
the one trend I didn't like that I thought was actually really stupid, was the one where people were taking the tops off of like ice cream and licking it and then
No,
putting it
especially
back
that
on.
one came right before Corona too.
Oh yeah.
That was actually like kind of upsetting.
Especially because
The
it was during
timing on
flu
that was-
Do
season.
you remember that?
Like no, what was it?
People were like going into a store, like a grocery store, they'd like take the top off of like an ice cream, they'd like lick it, close it, and put it back in the thing. And so like a lot of ice cream companies started coming out with this thing where it's like a plastic film, and
Yeah.
if like it's not on the thing, that means somebody removed it and like tried to lick it.
Yeah.
which is really dumb. I think there was only like 4 ever recorded.
The
cases
timing of that was so terrible.
Yeah.
And also, it was during flu season too.
Right
so-
pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so anyway, jazz music. Yeah, right? No, it's fun to talk about different things like that. But so we were just talking about the stuff that you missed is basically like playing things with an authentic expression. You know, it doesn't always have to be super fancy. Doesn't always have to be super fast. Doesn't have to be a ton of eighth notes. You literally play like 3 notes in a solo, and it can be really meaningful if you play it that way. Like, you know, if I play that like I really don't care about it. But if I play it, if I like put actual intention behind it. And then I can start incorporating. It's, you know, there's sort of necessity is the mother of creation. The more barriers you put on yourself sometimes, the more you have to be creative. Like, oh, I have to create something really beautiful with only these 3 notes. But then the more, it's kind of like, you guys ever been to like Baskin Robbins or Brahms or something like that? And you like walk up to the ice cream counter and you're just like, there's 31 things here and I don't know what the hell I want. Like, you know what I mean? And you're just kind of like, there's too much to work with. Or if you ever try to go and like paint a painting and you just get like this giant
Blank canvas syndrome.
yeah, blank canvas, and then you also have like a ton of colors. You're just like, I don't know which ones to use. I don't know what I want to paint. There's too many options.
Yeah.
But if you walk into an ice cream store and they're like, you want vanilla or chocolate? It's a lot easier, right? Oh, I want chocolate. Oh, I want vanilla. There's red or blue. What do you want to paint with? Why not both? Creative, you know, something like that. You have to get creative within there, and then you can start adding more things like that. And that's where learning certain really interesting scales comes in. Like my favorite scale to use is the Iberian scale. This is in concert E flat, the Iberian scale. I'll just play it straight up like this. So it starts on concert B flat, concert E, concert D, concert E flat, concert F, concert G flat, concert A flat, and then concert E flat. So it's basically like a natural minor scale, but with a lowered second, because the second lowered by a half step. So instead of going, it goes, and then you have a major third in there. And that you can get, for me, that's a really, really beautiful and colorful thing because it's got the flat 7 in there, which has a very, for me, every note has its own mood against, especially against certain chords and stuff like that, or even in a context where it's completely atonal is kind of the wrong word to use, but where I'm like by myself in a solo context, there's nothing going on behind me right now. There's no piano player, there's no drummer, there's no bass player, there's no band. By myself, each note has meaning and want to go to somewhere, and they're kind of like words. You have to know what words to use when, you know. And so if I start in the middle, I can go a couple of different ways. I can go up, I can go down, I can kind of do both. of tension just built up right now. And it's right before the final note, the octave. Now, in a melody, we have two terms that we use for the range. It's called the apex and the nadir. Apex means the highest point or highest note in the melody. Nadir means lowest note, lowest point. And those are kind of like really important things. You can have multiple apices and multiple nadirs, but you kind of want to, especially with apices, you want to save them for like that final thing. They're really important. Especially with an apex, to make it a good solo, you really only want to hit it once, ever. It can be in the middle, it can be at the end, whatever, but you don't return to it. That's it. And so, what choice I'm going to make whenever I get up there? If I want to keep the solo going longer, I'm probably going to go back down, because then I have to start playing a lot higher, and I could do that, but I kind of don't want to, you know. And so I have to make up these decisions as I go. If someone like Buck is doing and wants me to wrap it up, then I'm like, oh, okay. And then they have the thing, whatever, that's kicking in, right? And so playing with scales and notes and things like that, all of them have a meaning to you, whether you think it does or not. Like consciously, it does have a meaning to you. You know, there's like that really famous TikTok right now that's going around that's like, oh, I'm about to piss some musicians off, and they go and they have a flute, and they're like, and then they just stop right there. Everybody's like, oh, resolve it. But, you know, it doesn't have to be that way. For me, that seventh doesn't have to go up. It can be the resolution. Instead of making it have to go. For me, that's the resolution already. That's what we call the major seven chord. They're pretty prominent in jazz, major seven chords. We also have one of my favorites, which is called the 6/9 chord, where instead of where instead of playing major seven, you actually play the 6 against the 5, and you also stack the 9 on top of that. So what does that look like in the key of C major? So in C major, let's say the major 7 chord in root position is C. Then G, then B natural, right? That's the major 7 chord. Okay, now I'm going to build my 6/9 chord. So I'm going to go C, G is my 5th. So what's my 6th scale degree? It's A. Okay, now what's my 9th scale degree? It comes one after 8, which is the octave, which is D. Or the octave is C, but my 9th scale degree is D. So I'll play it all together. Like this. As opposed to one's not better than the other, but they both have different things. You could use them in different situations. You know, if you're going to resolve something, you might want to do. Kind of a nice bit of everything. Or you can just be doing 6/9, just purely for colorful things. But you're waiting for something a little bit more. me, in that specific chord progression, I want to gauge the room. What does that make you feel like? It's not home, but it's not too dissonant to where I'm not liking it. Yeah. Chill. Yeah.
Kind of feels like it's like starting something. Like you would hear it at the start of a song, either that or right before the end.
It could be where I leave off in a song that way. And I wouldn't be mad. Start a song that way.
Something you can like.
But do you get what I'm saying about how certain things make you feel a certain way, especially in that context? If it, you know, this, and then oh, this has a real life. I really love this. This is the ultimate one. Oh, it's a dominant with a sharp whatever on top of it. But, you know, that sounds really like, that's like, it's full of tension, but like a good kind of tension. Because you know it's going to resolve itself. It's like kind of both a resolution and dissonance on its own, you know? And so, you know, everything has its own context. So one of the things I can encourage you to do this week is maybe sit down with the piano, you know, pick out some chords you like. I like stuff like that. Like I'll do like an F minor thing right here. How's that make you feel? So I'm playing this. Let me just do the basic triad. Right, this is the basic triad right here. And then when I start stacking certain notes on top of it, it's going to start sounding different. Each one has a different movement. That makes me feel a certain way. How does this make me feel? How does this feel? How does this make me feel? What if I do something like this? That feels different from this. Try doing some very basic stuff. Put some notes on top of it and see how you feel. And then when you go into a jazz improvisational idiom, into that type of thing, you'll know ahead of time what you're going to do. For me, like for a big example for that, is if I have like a 2-5-1 in C minor, so let's say I'm doing like a for me, the 5 has got B natural. So I'm gonna try and use that in my if I'm gonna go there, I'm gonna try and use that in my playing. So going from, let's say, you see what I mean? Yeah. So that's how you use them. Try and use leading tones, stuff like that too. Those are real colorful notes. Stuff like that where they're about to lead into something that always sounds super, super good. So I'm gonna go ahead and class right here, but go ahead and take those things that we talked about today and apply them into your practice sessions.